Welcome, Rebels, in this episode.
So what? I just think it's this liberation that's so impactful, and it's not, I'm telling you what it's not instead of what it is. It's not the little engine that could, because it's not about accomplishment as much as it is you are worthy and you really are good enough. Why is that so hard to confirm for people?
You're listening to the Red Couch Rebels, a safe, comfy space for vulnerability and self-growth. I'm Jenny.
And I'm Erin.
We are seekers and self-advocates.
Yeah, we're not your doctors.
Or your therapists.
No, we're just fellow seekers on our own journeys of self-discovery.
Explore your inner rebel with us.
Let's sink in.
Well, Alan, I am super excited to have you on the Red Couch. We've had the honor of being on a podcast before together, co-host on Ladder Burners Unite, but it's been a while. So excited to have you here with Erin and I, and gonna dive into, I'm sure, a whole assortment of things. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Our first part, we really sink into your personal rebel story. So Ladder Burners, for those who haven't read it, I feel a very strong connection between the rebel energy and the Ladder Burners. So I am so excited to hear about what your personal journey of what we call the inner rebel, how did all of those factors play into the resulting in the book and the work that you've done? So do we want to do the first memory? Do you have any young memories of like feeling that inner truth is like a way that we kind of summarize an inner rebel, or do you have any memories tied back to?
I've thought about this. I had one very defining moment, that's for sure. But as I think of being a kid, this is such an odd memory. And it was, we were over at a friend's house playing football in the backyard. And somehow, some way, I kept feeling excluded. They weren't throwing me the ball and I got sick of it. And I just walked away. Literally, I started walking home. It was about 3 miles away. I must have been 10 years old. And my friend's mother came to get me as I was walking. She said, "I'll take you home. I just want you to be safe." And it's like that to me is kind of a telling piece, because it speaks to, I don't know if it's not speaking up. I think that's part of it. I know that's part of it later on in my life, but there was something where I felt that I was being dismissed, and I'm sure there's a common theme with a lot of people, and that I just said, "Screw it, I'm just not gonna do this," and I left.
I'm gone.
I'm out of here. But as a young kid, I think, as I've been thinking about this, I think the history of my psyche is pretty indelible, in the sense that I was the youngest of four. My sister was 16 years older. My older brother was 12 years older. And then Larry, and then there was a gap of 8 years, and then there was Larry, and then there was me. And I always thought, I was told that I was the mistake, but my sister-in-law said, no, it was Larry, my older brother.
That's usually
they wanted somebody to join. I think that's bullshit, by the way. I just think this was. But what was really defining for me, and this is not being a rebel, this is more to me, but it's if rebel is the pers- the opposition to what you're feeling or feeling you have to do. And I'm speaking about my case
Yeah.
because that was the issue. So um, I was what did my mother call me? The love child, and I was the savior in that family. My brother and sister, older brother and sister, um, some mental problems, and my sister was very hateful and angry at my dad forever. I say that anger put her in an early grave. Um, and so those expectations were very high for me.
Mm.
And people that knew me well, and I'm speaking of some of the relatives that were in the area, there was no bones about it. It was just, well, thank God for Alan. And so what do you do? I mean, could I rise to the occasion? Well, my secret weapon for rising to the occasion was a sense of humor. So I took it to be it, which kind of tells the story thereafter, to be the entertainer, to keep my parents, particularly my mom. My dad was going to be hard. Ed, how are you today? Oh, I don't know. My older brother Bob, he's just not doing well, and uh, Israel's messing up, and yeah, it didn't matter what it was. He had that always that edge that the sky was falling. My mother, I just felt such an obligation to keep things, uh, to keep them well. So the rebel part for me was really then working. There was no rebel. That was compliance. That was okay. This is the role, and so here, among other things, Jenny will know because we've talked about it so much. Uh, really begins the path of overachieving. So you do, but you got to do a little bit more. And my dad had very high standards, and I'd come home with a 98 on a math test, and his answer was,
What about the other 2%?
right, why not 100?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, screw you. What's so bad about that? But the shit hit the fan when I left, when I graduated from college from Madison, and I had applied to medical school. My uncle was on the admissions committee at Emory, was the doctor at one of the hospitals there. There's no doubt he pulled strings to get me in because I mean, my grades were good, my board sucked. But the thing is, I knew the minute, just that I told Jenny this story, the day they took us on a tour of the hospital, Grady Hospital, and they said, "Well, okay, let's go see the morgue." And I kept praying, "Please, I'm begging you, no dead bodies." I'm begging you.
Going into medical school?
Oh my God. I'm begging you. And the smell was overwhelming, smell of formaldehyde. And 6 weeks later, I quit. And that was really, if you want to talk about rebellion, it's like, I'm not going to do this. I never wanted to do this. So why did I even go? Why didn't I speak up? There was never a conversation about me going to medical school. I just expected many of those expectations were unarticulated. So was that me, or was I picking up vibrations? But it was, and there are many more stories that I can allude to where I agreed to do something that I knew in my gut I did not want to do.
Yeah.
I remember I was going to a psychiatrist. He said, "Well, I think you ought to get into group therapy." And it's like, fuck that. I don't want to get into group therapy. Well, guess what I did? I went into group therapy. And it's like, why did I do that?
Even though you inside, you were like,
Oh my
no,
God.
no,
It was,
no.
I mean, as I talk about it, and I kind of suspected talking about this, that this was really the way I felt. It's not so much rebelling at the time, it's that because that expectation was, well, somebody that you believe in or in authority, I guess. I mean, how would you describe it? Says you need to do this, then okay, I guess that's what I do. And I can continue because I think that the rebel part is not for me, although it got to be, especially as I focused more on my career, was not so much an immediate reaction as it wasn't spontaneous. It's not like I shouldn't say that. Walking off that that yard at 10 years old was spontaneous. I didn't give that any thought. And that it's just amazing. I can see exactly what happened.
How did you feel when you took that walk?
Empowered. Although I don't know that I knew what that word meant at 10, but
You felt it.
You felt, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I'm not going to do something that I don't want to do or that I don't feel I'm being treated right. And I mean, how badly was I treated? It was the expectation that I should be. I'll give you another example. This is so trite, but it was so meaningful. I ran for student body president when I was a senior.
Okay.
And I had so many. I mean, I had a whole crew of people, speaking of elections, that were behind me. And we had the 8th grade in our school, the high school. So it was 8 through 12. And that fucking 8th grade, I lost the 8th grade and lost the election.
Oh, no.
Now, wouldn't you say, come on, Alan, just give that up?
How many years later? Nope.
No, hell no.
Yeah.
I've got friends coming up this week that I grew up with, and Larry was he was big part of the campaign committee. And it's like, what the hell happened there? How did that?
Are you still reviewing this?
Oh, God, yeah. It's like, but it was like, okay, that's what I felt I should have. Maybe not maybe it's that you work hard, you do good work, all that kind of stuff.
It pays off. Yeah.
That it pays off. And so it's that gap between I'm not keen on the word gap, but it was a difference between the expectations, whether they were self-imposed, and what I was doing. And that eventually led to an understanding, and I'm not blaming my dad. I just rebelled against it. I can remember this was another incident when I was in high school applying for a really prestigious type of scholarship. It was a merit scholarship to get into Carolina. And he he coached me on the interview and what I needed to talk about. And I remember going to that interview and I didn't make any sense at all. Talk about current events. And it's like, okay, they didn't ask me about current events.
But you were talking about them.
What the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
And even so, it's with pulling strings, and my dad's thing was it's not what you know, it's who you know. I didn't buy it. So this is really the book, Jenny, in retrospect, I feel it is as much autobiography as anything about my own experience, and said, "Oh, well, guess what? It You want to talk about my dissertation committee? I felt like I had to have the best dissertation committee. So I had the chair of the party, the chair of the department. I had the dean of the School of Education, and I had a guy that was visiting at Boston University that was a really a brilliant humanistic educator.
Mm.
Written a couple of books. I had read one. He was there on a, I don't know, exchange or something. Asked him to join. Sure. Well, my major professor hated the dean, and I knew that. The major professor was really arrogant. Now, you say, well, did he have to be your major professor? I mean, did he have to be the head of the committee? No. I just thought that's what you had to do.
Mm.
So he and I came to blows with about 6 months before I was ready to finish this thing up. And I figured one of us would be dead on uh, Tremont Street in Boston, but luckily that didn't happen. But you say, well, why did you do that? I had a friend, very close friend. She was working on her dissertation at the same time. And I will tell anybody now, I don't know how different the process is. You want to get, and I got good advice when I went to see someone, another authority, and he listened to me and he said, just write the damn dissertation and leave. This was the head of the School of Education at Harvard because who had some interest in the subject. That said, just finish it up and get the hell out of there. Whereas I was going to convince this threesome that we all have to get along. It's like, what drives that? And so is that an inner rebel? The inner rebel now has come out on the other side of that. And it's like, I understand those games much better. And while I don't naturally gravitate to it, and I think Jenny knows this, even though I make it sound like it's my brother-in-law told me a story. Well, bullshit, it's my story. It's whose ass are you going to kiss? And it's like, well, it doesn't have to be quite that way. It's who do you have to win over in order to get what you feel is important. So the rebel part now, I'd say in my more adult life, no, I wouldn't say the majority of my adult life, but definitely since I moved here, has been more of, okay, here's how these things work. And you don't have to play the game. You have to understand the game. So that's what I said. Well, I'm just never I mean, I thought I was bright enough to be in charge of something big. I would suck at something big. I don't have that attention to all the finite details and all the relationships that have to be built. But then to me, and this really came through conversations with you, where it's like, well, you know what really isn't about what you accomplish. It's about the people that you surround yourself with. Because if they respect you, if they love you, if they care about you, there you go. That's it. That there's so you get 1,000 people that you listen to your podcast, or you get 100. In the scheme of things, you got 100 people that believe the way you do.
Or believe in you.
And believe it. That
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah.
It's not what you do.
Yeah, it's not
you.
believing the same exact thing. It's
Right.
just, feeling, I mean, especially as we're talking about rebel and everything, it's we want the different beliefs
Right.
and conversation and just creating space for each other to explore and get to know the parts of ourselves that sometimes we just don't even look at because it's like, oh, well, that person wants me to, do this or that or believe this or that. So, okay.
Yeah. No, great point. It's that, and that's a big, is it it's the judgment, the difference in judgment by what we do and who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And that is huge. And that's not easy, I think, to separate. So, was I smoking in the boys' room or doing drugs or um, doing mischief? Well, I did mischief.
We do
Those
call
are the
you
things.
Trouble.
Yeah, well, I was mischievous. I think that's what people would have said. That I'd be the one that my buddy and I in high school, last period of the day was the newspaper, and we go into the men's room and flush all the toilets at the same time.
Okay, that's a different kind of trouble.
yeah,
That
that was, but yeah, no, and part of this humor, which I know you can attest to, is the sarcasm.
Mhm.
And I feel like I perfected that I could be funny, sarcastically funny. And I had a girlfriend in high school. Instead of calling me a smart aleck, she called me a smart Allen, which was pretty telling.
Mhm.
So that tells me that that's not just something that I did. And that's the kind of stuff that it could and has gotten me in trouble when you're you're doing that for the wrong reason.
Yeah. So, Alan, you mentioned, that it's not as much what you do. It's more, who you are. And that's the theme of the book. So we're just for listeners and watchers. What we're talking about is, and Alan's referenced a few times, is his latest book, Burn Ladders, Build Bridges, Pursuing Work with Meaning and Purpose. And full disclosure, Alan and I worked very closely on this together. Obviously, I didn't do any writing, but was there to, cheer you on and support. And I wasn't the one that said just write the damn paper, but you did have somebody else. Yeah. But anyways, obviously that theme of it's not what you do, it's who you are. And, again, that idea of who you surround yourself with, that really matters. And it is why, we are very intentional when we kick off the podcast and dive in. It's not like, okay, we've got Alan Patterson here, past executive coach and leadership. He's got a Dr. Alan Patterson, PhD, da 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 da, right? Like, it is more so why you do what you do. So why did you do what you do, or did? Does that make sense? Why did you do what you did for so many years in the realm of ladder burning, probably before you called it ladder burning?
Why did I do what I did for so many years? I thought the whole notion of corporate America was awful in the sense that it not bringing out the full potential in people. Why would I care about that? Well, I cared about that for myself, but I think what was more became more intriguing, if you will, to me was I always had an interest in what motivates people. And I guess one of the early, while I probably wouldn't have known it at the time, but I think there was a time in my teenage years where I was depressed. Definitely that medical school thing was a shit show. So I think that in finding my way, I wanted the truth. I wanted to seek the truth. Don't ask me. It's like if I could figure out the Rosetta Stone, what's there, and I think I did, and that is people, I think everyone wants two things and two things only. One is to love, and the second is to be loved. And there you go. Well, can I distill everything into that? Yeah, pretty much.
That's funny. I sign every guest book at weddings here with the song, the quote of the greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return.
There
And
you
because
go.
that's what it comes back to is belonging, like belonging to someone else and having them belong to you.
Yeah.
So it's how many variations of a theme do you want to do on that? If that's what underlines it, then I could dispense with what I thought was the bullshit. I worked with two guys in Rhode Island when I was living there, and we really made a go of it. I mean, we had some big clients, and we were doing some fun projects, and we were working for corporate America, but I couldn't work. I tried it once and almost got fired to work inside a company. But I loved being able to, I always say this, I love being able to say, okay, here's what you need to do. And they say, well, that's pretty much what we knew. I said, yeah, okay, and here's a bill.
And now go do it. If you
Yeah,
knew you
yeah,
needed
if
to
you
do
knew
it,
it.
then why weren't you doing it?
Right. It's so without being, and I should say, I worked with some really, really, really great people. That was the best part of the job to me.
Sure.
I met, I mean, like we were at SeaWorld doing work down there. And I'll never forget this one person stood up and said, my name is such and such, and I'm curator of mammals. Now, let me ask you, how many people have you met in your life that are curators of animals or mammals? It's like this is what people do for a living, and that to me was the really exciting part. And then while everybody wants to feel special, their issues are different, meaning in organizations. Not for nothing, as they say in Rhode Island, that respect, giving respect and receiving respect. Okay, so what's happening here? It's so that I think to answer your question about what was I doing, before I was thinking about burning ladders and building bridges, I think it was digesting my own. I think it was my own rationalization, if that's so. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, of why being the myth of being everything you can be and accomplishing everything that can be accomplished was a way to get ahead in life in your career, and it's just not true for most people. And that's really when I realized, well, the thing I have always had going for me is being anywhere from the buffoon or comedian to really driving some belief around like what we're doing with the school. It's like, who does this? Who thinks like this? Who creates a school that says, oh no, you can work with kids and not bullshit them about they can be anything they want. You show them what's important. You help them discover what's important for them.
And the school we're referencing is Treffert Way.
Treffert Way.
It's a charter school.
It's a charter school. Now the high school has all kinds of potential. It took somebody told me they were driving by the school the other day and the kids were outside with a teacher. It's like that was the best day you could ever have in high school or college. Let's go outside.
Yeah.
They go outside every day if they want it. And so the point is I feel that the liberation comes when you can touch people's hearts.
Yeah.
You had finished that sentence with finding it for them, right? That's the rebel experience of finding it within yourself. And what I heard you say about your own journey was, as a child, you were tasting other people's expectations.
Right.
Be the comedian. These are the expectations for school. These are the, so we try all that on, but we don't, how many people know who they are without tasting who they aren't?
Great point. Great point. Very few. Very few. I mean, I have a very close friend who also helped give me some ideas during the book, and Jenny has met him virtually, Mark Walters, and I just love that guy, and he's a rebel. I mean, he's a Renaissance man, but his journey he was what did he tell me he did? I don't know. He had some job and he quit and he decided he would work on a tugboat.
Love it.
And it's like, okay, so what do you now? He's a college professor. He's authored 7 books. He's taught at Harvard. And he would never tell you this stuff like that. He doesn't talk about it like I talk about it.
Sure.
He is the kindest, sweetest, most brilliant, artistic, compassionate, well, I'm going to say man, but person one could ever meet. I don't think there are many men like Mark Walters. And so it's like, oh, guess what? I know Mark Walters. Well, good for you. What do you want? You know somebody, you have to have the association to have it. It's how he touches the people that he's around. Now, I glorify it because I love him. So what? So Jenny knows one thing that we kind of came up with as we were talking about, well, what is climbing the ladder? It is confirmation for 98% of people, especially if you're, and this is a whole other kind of mission I've been on, especially if you're a person of color or a woman, it is the road to not good enough. That's the road you're walking when you're trying to go up. Because for women and for people of color, there are too many barriers. And first of all, you don't know what the hell's at the top, because for the most part, it's sheared off and it can change. And so the literature says if you're a white guy, thin, 6'2", white hair, those are the people that make it to the top. It's like, well, that's pretty fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
So don't do that.
Don't play that game.
Don't. And don't think of yourself as not being good enough. I'm sure we all resonate with that.
Yeah.
I mean, so what does it take? Like people telling me this, I'm off on a tangent, so drag me back. But when people,
We love tangents around
Yes.
here.
yeah, well, tangential thinking is my specialty.
Yeah.
When people that I've worked with have said, well, I shouldn't have to tell people, if I'm the leader of the group, I shouldn't have to tell people that when they've done a good job, because that's the expectation. That's their job, is to do a good job. I said, that's good. I like that. So what that means is the only time you talk to them about their job is when they screw up.
I mean,
That's good. I like that. That's very.
when you put it in those terms, I hope they get it.
It also applies to parenting, though.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to go. And you know what? I learned that this can get a little trite, I suppose, but how important it is to thank just about anybody and everybody that's done something that you appreciate. What's wrong? What's the downside there? I sound like a softie. I mean, what's the down? There's no
downside.
There's no downside there. I really appreciate. That's Nick's thing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to up him with "I really love you," but appreciate seems to stand out more.
He does. Nick, we're going to work on you there.
Yeah, well, I know. Yesterday I got him to say, I said, Nick, I love you. And he said, I love you too.
Yeah. Nick was a fellow co-host for a while on the podcast. And
he's a great guy.
Yeah, does a lot in the leadership world. Humanistic Leadership is the name of his company, correct?
It is.
Yeah.
So what? I just think it's this liberation that's so impactful, and it's not, I'm telling you what it's not instead of what it is. It's not the little engine that could, because it's not about accomplishment as much as it is you are worthy and you really are good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that so hard to confirm for people? Oh, they'll get soft, and you're going to hand out prizes for everybody in the race. No, there's nothing wrong with. Everybody doesn't have to have a participation medal. That's not what it's about.
That's not what we're talking about.
But because you didn't get one doesn't mean, and that's the problem with classically with overachievers, is if they don't, they have their own standards, and that's problematic. And if they don't reach them, they don't need anybody to tell them that they're good or bad. I mean, I talked a lot about that. The leadership stuff was tailor-made for me because it gave me a chance to jump into all the principles around how do you, part of it is how do you motivate people, but it's how do you understand, to what extent do you understand the folks that you're working with and for. And I mean, I just like the psychology of it all, and yeah.
Well, I think we'll jump into part 2 in like the more, I don't know, career growth, and I don't know where that one will go, but to bring it back for part 1 into more of your story and your rebel explorations in life. I know Erin and I had talked. We'd love to hear like how that's. You don't have to go super deep on this, but unless you're ready for it.
I'm begging you. Don't go super
I'm not promising I won't go super deep.
I'm telling you, let's keep it. Keep focused, Alan. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So my curiosity, and I think Erin, you can add to this, is when it's come to just your personal relationships, whether that be friends, family, how has that rebel showed up in those instances, not just career wise and professionally?
Well, I think there's it sounds so clinical, there's the effective, less effective side. The less the effective side is letting it all hang out. It's just, this is how I feel. This is what I think is important. This is what I feel like. But now I'm talking to a lot of people, as you can well imagine who these folks are.
Yeah.
About the election. And I'm meeting some really interesting people as a result. And it's like, that's I call it a kick. It's a kick. This is what Nick has conceptualized, I think, a lot more than I do. To jump on the bringing joy bandwagon, I think it is part of it. But when you do something with people you really like and respect, and you know what? It doesn't matter whether it's a friggin' car wash, or you just, like a fellow that I met, he literally worked on the internet when it first came out, not Al Gore. This guy was an engineer, and it's like, I said, what was that like? He said, I can't explain it. It was like, Watson, get in here, like inventing the telephone. They sent out this message and it got received at some university. How many kicks do you get? How many? And it's like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's what you live for, those moments. And hopefully it's not something that you have to dwell on,
Yeah.
that you can just accept as what's given. I mean, is that it happened. Here's a good example.
Yeah. The book.
The book. This was not, I had no idea where this was going to end up. And my colleagues in Hendersonville, when they read that read this and saw that last part was an address to my kindergarten class, and they went to the same kindergarten.
Yeah.
But I kind of stole that.
That's great. That's great.
I don't think I answered your question.
I mean, you kind of did, that it doesn't matter, who it is. It's really comes down to connection and flow. And I think what you were starting to say a little bit was that I think you were saying the clinical, like effective, ineffective. So the effective was what I was hearing you say was vulnerability to a degree, like being willing to go there, being willing to, connect to your heart and share your heart. What you said before in the context of, everybody's, either wants to be they want to be loved and give love.
Yeah.
And that, it's obviously very much apparent and relevant in personal relationships. And it probably makes it a little messy because we're human.
The less effective side.
Yeah.
And thank you for reminding me that I forgot it, is the pleaser, being a pleaser. And I don't want to get too deep on that one, but because it's still alive and well.
Well, I mean, we've talked people pleasing, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We've talked about that on the podcast several times with, I think that's just,
I'm a pleaser.
Yeah.
I was the golden child in the family. How could I not be a pleaser? Please.
Yes.
I had a lot of training. Hold on to that thought. Let me go over here and do some shuttle diplomacy. Larry, you need to do it. This is just so off base, but it just speaks. While my parents were still in good mental and physical, not so much physical, mental health, they made me the executor of their estate with the charge of, you have to take care of your older brother.
Mm.
How's that? Not live with him, but manage his money. What does that say? So I just, and I loved my parents. And a lot of people, this is so off base.
No.
A lot of people thought I was an only child because I talked more about my parents than my siblings.
Hmm.
And my sister and I, unfortunately, in retrospect, really didn't get along. I thought she was so selfish, but I digress. And my older brother and I really didn't get along until Shelley said to me, you need to go see your brother. He was in Arizona because he's older and he wasn't in great health. And I spent 4 years with him, not at his place, but we talked every week. And he died of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And what a gift. Thank you, Shelley. And my brother Larry, I just love my brother Larry. So, and he could talk the chrome, the guy I worked with said he could talk the chrome off a trailer hitch. I mean, Shelley says, well, you're not so far behind. And go, yeah, okay, well, that's fine.
How do you balance those two? Because they're so opposites. Because you talked about radical honesty. Basically, that's how I would summarize it, right? Showing up in your true, authentic self as much as possible. Let it all hang out. How do you balance that with people pleasing?
It's the people that you please. It's more. It's like I wouldn't want Jenny to think that I didn't value her work if I chose someone else to do graphic design or something like that. I would be concerned, as an example. That's not pleasing, so much pleasing, but I've done a better job. I just still have some blind spots with certain people where I'm willing to uh, pick my battles, I guess, or you know. And by the way, I don't think that's healthy.
Do you feel that with some people you can just be radically you,
Oh God,
and
yes.
other people you put on
It's not.
this mask? Or
I don't. I appreciate. I think that's a possible characterization. I think it's more of just going along with things, or doing something that somebody else. It's not. This is where it gets really deeply personal, and it's not in the scheme. Well, I guess if I'm talking about it, it must be important to me. But I would say there's a shock. I'll go for the shock value. I'm trying to tone that down and not be so radical around some things. Like I can tell you, I don't know if I told you this story about being at the civic organization I was a part of, and a politician came in, and when that person came in, I said, "Oh, wait a minute! I thought we said there'd be no politicians at Rotary." And oh well, it was done in advance, blah blah blah. And when the conversation turned to Hunter Biden's computer, I blew it.
Mm.
I was not yelling and screaming. I was pretty loud. We're fighting for our country, and you're worried about what's on Hunter Biden's computer. Anyway, I think the way to get into people's hearts, if that's what you're doing, is an ongoing process, if you will. I think there has to be a real heartfelt understanding, and that's I had one of my business partners, fellow I worked with when I was still in Rhode Island, and we went to a meeting, and he said, I'm going to tell you something. You got to realize that we go to these meetings with customers. You want to talk about yourself? No, it's not about you. Wow, really? I was talking about myself, my favorite subject. How did that slip out? It was good advice.
Yeah.
So there.
So balancing. I think every situation is different, and it's not easy. I mean, to what you were saying, when something sparks in you or triggers you, how do you come at it from a respectful, like that goes back to the respect piece. I don't know.
I think this experience that I've had with Treffert Way, it's like I can tell people what to do if they're in leadership positions, and then when you're in one, I have been much more authoritative than I maybe even would have advised other people. It's like, well, this is what we're going to do, and here's who I think could lead this up, having talked with somebody in advance. And here's the way I think this should go. We built a playground.
Yeah.
We raised money for a playground.
There's that masculine energy.
Yeah.
There you go.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You
You need both.
Yeah.
Yep.
And hey, I don't know, but there's it's so interesting to be involved, if interesting is the right word, in a leadership position where you're really working hard to understand the person you're working with or the people you're working with. And I have no qualms at all about asking for people's help. I have this idea. I felt this way on the Women's Fund board too, on every board. It's like if I'm going to head something up, I'm not going to apologize for taking up your time. I'm saying, you want to be a member of this board? That's great. Okay, we got work to do. Well, I got other things to do. I know you do. I know you do.
Yeah.
So I think that the rebel part in the last 10 years, maybe 15, but definitely 10, is a lot more emphatic. And part of it is I'm feeling my clock ticking. It's like I don't know how much time I got left. And there are things that I feel that require a sense of urgency that I might not have expressed that way. I mean, we could think about things that we were involved in together, and there were many. And it's like, we're all over the place. Well, no, we can't be all over the place. This is just too important to make these kinds of decisions that will impact other people. So, point being is that I think the rebel part is, it's a hell of a way to put it, take no prisoners. We going to do this? Do you want to do this? Okay, then let's do it. Oh, I don't know any people. I don't know how to ask for money. I don't know how to ask for money. But here's a person you can call, and you'll love this person.
Yeah.
And then you ask for money.
I think it can show up both ways, though. I think the rebel that's a very masculine, take no prisoners, but there is also a very feminine aspect of the rebel that begs us to soften and feel our authentic feelings, right? Like all those things that you were doing as a child. Walking away was assertive, but not aggressive. It wasn't to take no prisoners. It was a softened acceptance of this is who I am and I'm empowered to make a choice, and it didn't have to be aggressive or assertive. I'm just making a choice to move away, right? That could be seen as more feminine.
I think Jenny knows this. I said it so many times. And I think this is why I love Nick so much, is because of his feminine side. Women are so much better than men. They're smarter. They get more done. If you want to get into doing and juggle more balls. I adored my mother. She worked. I wouldn't say she raised 4 kids. We had help in the household, but she had 4 kids. She ran a business with my dad, and I just have tremendous respect. But some people would disagree with me on that for women, and I think they're better leaders than men because they understand. They take the time to not cram things down people's throats. So yeah, it's on my part, it's more aggressive maybe at this point than I've been in the past, and a little more not a little more task oriented. But to learn the power of listening and understanding and finding out what's really important to people. Women got men beat by a lot. And I always felt this way. I said, you want to find out how a guy will be in a marriage, understand how they treat or treated their mother. I loved my mother. But then again, I was the baby and, oh, honey. And she had this southern, oh, sweetie. Mom, I just failed an algebra test. Oh, you're so smart.
Love it.
Yeah.
Who would you say inspired your inner rebel? And you could speak to that being, as a child, as a young adult, now. Who's inspired that in you?
I don't know. can think of bits and pieces of different people. I don't envision a role model as much as I want to get to know you better.
Sure. It sounds like just an innate curiosity.
Yeah. I mean, what makes Mark Walters tick? This guy's done so many different things. Played the guitar, and his guitar teacher said, "Show me what you can do." He took the guitar, played it behind his back.
Oh, God.
I mean, so
That's impressive.
well, yeah, it's just the nature. I mean, that's why, as I was writing this, and Marion responded to it, because I said, to me, it's all about can you work with, can you find and relate to and associate with people that are interesting and interested, because those people are really cool.
Okay, let's say if we reframed it and said, who encouraged your curiosity?
There you go.
I had a couple of teachers in high school that were, one who was very, very, he was a math teacher, very by the book, very business oriented approach. Never told us, never, ever, ever announced a test in advance. It was always okay. And we dreaded this word when he would close your books and take out a sheet of paper. Oh, Mrs. Swaffer, no, I'm begging you. Or Mrs. Westmoreland, who, when we had to do a book report, would not tell you in advance whether it was going to be written or oral.
Oh, boy.
And so you'd walk in there and say, okay, who wants to be first? Oral. So I think that there's something that was very magical about our high school, and I've been in touch with a lot of my friends the last 5 years, reunions and such. And those are the people that the teaching learning thing was very inspirational to me. So, well, what about relatives? Well, my dad, I mean, I love my dad, and he was in the trailer hitch thing, but he to the point of his being inspirational when he called himself a middle of the road Democrat. He was he wasn't all the way on the far left side of things. Definitely not a Republican. Here's a good example. When he and my mom owned a men's store and a ladies store, clothing store, and in 1970-ish, living in North Carolina, he had a young fellow from the high school that he had work in doing custodial things. And one day he went up to him and said, "Okay, Tyrone, I want you to come in Monday with a tie and a white shirt on because you're going on the floor. And it's time." And I don't know how many weeks later, he got a letter from somebody that said, "Ed Patterson, you're nothing but an N-loving Jew." And Dad, I think he was kind of proud of that.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty inspirational. He
Is.
didn't have real liberal views on stuff, but he would crap today if he was around and lived to see what happened today. So he as a relative, I think he probably was the most inspirational. My mother was inspirational because she was all love. To me, for me, not for my brothers and my sister wouldn't agree
You had a
with that.
different experience.
Yeah, they had but
Can
I
we
think
circle back to something you talked about earlier?
we have to. Sure.
I was feeling into this whole the radical honesty versus the people pleasing, and it sounded like it was like, are you choosing? My first thought was choosing your battles.
Yeah.
But then it kind of shifted in my mind to like choosing the spaces, like where are the spaces being the people or the relationships or the communities where you can be radically honest and vulnerable and authentic, and choosing those spaces that Steph had called it not abandonment of self, but protection of self, right? Like preserving our energy in the spaces where that's not going to be received well.
Yeah.
Does that
Well put.
sound okay?
Perfect. Great description and explanation. Perfect.
Done.
I wouldn't have come up with that on my own.
Well, this is the cool thing about the podcast is like we reference old podcasts
Yeah,
often
now-
on ours because it's like, oh wait, I see this from
Yeah.
that person, and now you're sharing the story, right?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm just gonna pick my battles. And it's like, well, no, it's why?
Why? Yeah.
Because I don't want to get roughed up.
Yeah.
Right. And you really are spending energy trying to if you're still people pleasing in the sense that
Oh,
you
God.
want to be accepted,
Absolutely.
right? That's a
Abs-
different type
that-
of people pleasing.
Absolutely. No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
hmm
No doubt.
So your people pleasing has evolved.
Yeah. But yeah, I need more than 20 times or 100 times in Jenny's presence. I have said, okay, let's just get one thing straight. I crave attention.
hmm
I do.
Well, that was the first thing you
I-
were
I- I
taught.
mean-
That's your role, is to be the
Yeah,
entertainer.
I mean, it's like, yeah, this is pretty cool. So wait, and I've done some really dumb things as a result of that, but what the heck? I know that about myself. So I have to turn that off sometimes and and that's the snarky part where it's like, okay, I'll see you one and raise you one.
Mhm.
You know.
In those spaces where you're not worried about being accepted. So sometimes you got to throw a jab in there. Is
Yeah,
that what you're saying?
well, sometimes I would say sometimes it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You
okay.
know, that's what matters, the people that you care about or that care about you. But when it's more out there, uh, all the political stuff going on now, it's just just speaks to that. But even then, if you say, there's no way you're going to convince anyone by yelling in their face. But if somebody said to me, the Jews will not replace us, I'd want to kick them in the nuts. You can bleep that out.
If you want me to.
That's pretty aggressive. You're gonna say that, but
Well,
that's what
I mean,
I would do.
It's an
Because I didn't put up with as much crap as my older brother did
Mm.
about Jews. This is in the Bible Belt. So the Jews are Christ killers and money lenders and own the media and merchants. Well, there are a lot of Jewish merchants in Hendersonville. It's a very small town. The clothing business, Jews kind of had that sewn up.
Mhm.
But I wouldn't put up with any of that today. None. Zero.
well, I think you're in a safe space right now. Would that be, well, you did say you'd kick them. So I was like, would that just be walking away like you did?
No.
No, that would be, that
Oh, no,
there would be more aggression.
that would be that would hit a trigger for me.
Yeah.
Because of all the years you had to take one on the chin, or
N- n- it- It's I'm not gonna be voiceless
Mhm.
in a situation that it's just screw you. I'm not accepting. Jews will not replace. Well, guess what? The Jews don't want to replace you.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go out, and you can say, well, when you get people that are that hateful, and that, I mean, Klan rallies in the county next to where I grew up one time, and papers that were being written and circulated about with all this anti-Semitic stuff, and so yeah, I think as I've gotten older, it's like if I'm not going to sit, I'm not going to take it. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it.
Well, and at some point, because some people talk about it as like you're above that, like by saying something back about these things, that then we're validating it in some way by engaging in the conversation. But isn't it also enabling their voices to get louder without any counterpoint, right? Like,
Precisely.
yeah.
I mean, they're walking around with tiki torches. This is just close your eyes and open them, and it's Nazi Germany. 10 million dead people later. And it's so, no. You think that's, you say, well, people have the right of to their own conviction, but it's the hatred part that's so upsetting. And that goes, it doesn't matter who's on the replacement side. I didn't understand that expression at first. Now I do, because the replacement piece is huge. People feel that there are many people that feel that what America was, which by the way, it really wasn't, but it was to them, is being completely disrupted because, God forbid, women have the right to vote and people can choose to change their gender, and women are allowed to do something other than cook. I don't
Take
know.
care of the home.
Yeah, or I mean, and it's like this. I had a professor in college that was brilliant. He was so good, and his specialty was Southern history, and he made the point. This is really a way out tangent, but he made the point that in racial theory, the big issue, one of the big issue is place, the place that people have in society. So during the definitely Jim Crow era, but really throughout U.S. history, that was the concerns that African Americans didn't understand their place. No, you can't talk to a white woman. No, you can't walk down that street. No, you can't vote. No, you can't use that restroom. My one thing I think this biggest irony for me is that what was once the blacks only restroom, one of the ones in Hendersonville, became the police station. And they just took over that part of the city building. So that has neither here nor there.
Well, I think there's something too, that rebel energy. When I think of any time someone's told me this is your place, or do this, or don't do that, like the evolved people pleaser and just evolved in a rebel, like over the years, initially it would be like, okay, but inside I'd be like fuming, right? And now it's just like, oh, whatever. You're just, actually, something happened the other day where somebody said, I don't think you should do that ever again. And I was like, I won't, because I'm making that choice to not do that again. And you saying that makes me want to do it again.
See, that's maybe, I don't know how you characterize it, but me, it's like, say that again. Tell me. I'm not saying what you said was wrong. No, there's no right or wrong on this.
Yeah.
It's like, what? Say, or as they say in the South, say what?
Yeah. Well, it's just that opposition. Like,
my God.
Yeah.
And then you strip it away, and then it's it's just this is really so hard and so widespread, and it it's been there, and this is what I think, and why, even though it's a really small chapter, um, the American dream is a myth in my book. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist for all people, and it doesn't even the white males. While it looks like it exists, it doesn't. So to make people think, and while I didn't really go deep into it, I think this was a bit of where, without any pushback, the story got created that you can be anything you want to be, and
It was marketing for patriotism.
there you go. Well said. Well said. There it was. And so you get into the Industrial Revolution, and you chop up jobs, and do your job and do your job.
Well, it was very effective. There's the kids still today are trying to run out and buy houses right away. They're trying to check those boxes as quickly as possible. And I mean, in my ultimate wisdom of 43 years, I'm like, why? Like, have you found that thing that like makes you like feel sparked and alive? Because once you have all those balls and chains that the American dream is going to hand to you, it's so much harder to explore and find that spark and find that inspiration, right?
Right.
So it's like I'm trying to make them look at it that way. Right now, you have much more freedom to explore and find out what you're not, right? Like what we talked about before, and then find that thing. And when you find that thing, then let that thing grow and be the thing that supports you.
I think there's a whole. I'll just go back and say what I said. It's a myth. People want to believe it, and then I think it's can be directional. I think there could be a nice message, but it doesn't apply to all people.
Ooh, directional. That's a good word because I find a lot of people need the direction. They want the roadmap. Give me the
Yeah,
answers, right?
absolutely.
Like even in my coaching, it's like, tell me how to do this, tell me the answers. But really good coaching helps you find your own answers.
Right.
Yeah.
But people don't want to do that exploration. They want it.
Tough.
I love it. Tough.
Tough shit.
Yeah, but I would say the majority of people do follow whatever roadmap they were given or they have access to. Let to be fair, right? They follow that and they get through. It's the people that go off in the wilderness or burn the ladder and build bridges, whatever corporate world or in your life, whatever, right?
Whatever.
Yeah, yeah. They're a small percentage.
They are. I started off with a true story about a engineer that came up to me. This was in Boston, biotech firm, just bright, ultra bright people working there. Somebody came up and said, "Dr. Patterson, I got to see you." Well, what's cooking? I didn't get a promotion, and this was a promotion that was supposed to be by how much time that person had worked in the job, which is kind of a silly thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Well, did you talk to your boss?" And this person said, "Well, why would I do that?
Why would I do that?
Why would I do that?"
It's like it never crossed their mind.
It's like, what do you think your boss knows? I didn't even go beyond that.
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, I've got an opening for a book." I'm not going to change his story.
Yeah.
But that's there's such a better, I think that what you're doing, and encourage you to continue, even though it's laborious. I mean, I hit the wall. Jenny had a lot more understanding tenacity than I did when you get into all the nits and nats of how to put these things together and all of that. But these conversations are important, and it doesn't matter how many people you have them with. You just have them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's and I felt like maybe I was just begging off. I don't know if I told you this, but Neha Singh contacted me. Did I tell you that? She said, I haven't seen anything on social media in so long, and I don't know if Jenny is busy or could she do it. And I said, I just haven't been on. Nice that you would say.
Yeah, well, she's missed you. That's good.
But I think that's the message. I think this is just it's the connection. It's the quality. It's the rebels are motivated by something that is deeper and more intense. And you know what? Some of it is a chip on your shoulder. At least that's how I see it. In my case, I had something to prove. What do you mean I didn't? I'm not president of that fucking school.
Damn 8th graders.
God almighty. I don't even know who those 8th graders are. I'm going back to Henderson. How did you vote? Isn't that ridiculous? Yeah, come on.
Oh, goodness. Well, I think let's wrap part 1 here. Sure. And we'll pick up in part 2. Thank you so much for joining us on the Red Couch. We would love if you would head on over and subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. It helps us tremendously as we rebel against the status quo of disconnection. We need you. We appreciate you. You can also head on over to our website, redcouchrebels.com, to send us a note and explore your inner rebel with us on our online network. We'd love to see you there.